So today's video is going to be something awkward. Awkward in the sense that it's not like the official way we make our presentations when we try to give trainings and lectures on various subject matters in cybersecurity. So officially today, we are going to release the first version of our active recon tool known as the Rdpit. So the Rdpit basically is a tool that performs auto recon in terms of active recon for DNS resolutions, and of course, pinging IP address of targets which you specifically have or you're trying to engage in their bug bounty programs. So in our previous videos, we've been walking you through the steps of various tools we build and the concept of how we're building those tools based on the ideas, or should we say the task which we want those tools to perform. So in those videos, we talked about how you can build a ping tool, how you can build a DNS resolution tool, and so on. So this concept stems from a perspective whereby we are much interested on newbies getting into cybersecurity and not having the financial resources to purchase auto recon tools, or let's say subscribe for services that request them to have a subscription to be able to use the full function of their tools. So over the months and weeks of our trainings, we've been demonstrating live coding live sections and showing you how to write simple tool codes with Python. And those codes, basically, we demonstrated them live, showing you the ins and outs and the concept of every lines of code and how they function. So, and if you've been following up with our various trainings, we stated that for the complex codes and advanced recon tools, which is based on these free lectures and sections, we would not be demonstrating live because these processes are quite cumbersome, whereby we need to debug the codes, we need to track the errors, we need to do some reference, we need to cross-check our logic where it's properly implemented, and of course, other places where it's failing us as well. So after various trainings and various subsequent YouTube content, we decided to move on to an advanced version of this tool, whereby we infuse both the ping tool and of course the DNS resolution tool all in one compact tool that has the promising features, or should we say the future prospects of getting more advanced features implemented and modifying variant versions of the tool when we're going to release them. So for today, we are going to demonstrate the first tool and the first version of this tool, which is the Rdpit. Like we previously said, this tool is specifically designed to carry out a ping process and also resolve DNS records of various domains or IP address belonging to targets or infrastructures you definitely have authorization to pen test. So it's just the first version of this tool, and trust us, we have quite a lot of concept and ideas we want to infuse into this tool. Basically not trying to design it in such a way whereby you will need a proxy or you will need to hide behind a VPN because of the way you throttle or you try to assess a given target infrastructure. So barely this tool is just going to be based on raw codes. So raw codes are codes that basically do not have anything to get flagged out in the future. And if eventually you get blocked, it's just going to be your IP address, not basically the tool. Just like if you use tools like Bob Shield or other active recon tools such as Zap Proxy, you understand that most of these tools have their various nomenclature on how they perform their active recon. So subsequently, organizations are known to block these various tools because of the ports, or should we say the intruding ports where these probing are coming from these various tools. So our tool is just basically a raw code based on our understanding, and not so vast. We won't say we're so vast, but we can also boast as well that we have a deep knowledge in cybersecurity. And using this vast knowledge to understand the concept of what we want to design, and at the end of the day, create something that is very cool that others can use as well. So it's just a random video. This is not going to be like the official video like we do because it's just demonstrations. And on our screen here, you can see that we have various files, not just the files as well. We have the hierarchies of how we rested those files in the various directories. So these various directories, as we all know, basically have their various functions, or should we say attributes, they carry out in this entire code structure. So some of these directories hold special files, which are of the Python extension. And these various Python extension files have various functions they carry out in the entire process of this tool. So we're not going to talk much. Let's just demonstrate this tool and, of course, tell you what it's all about. So previously, we have run some Python codes of this tool. So that's why we have the Python cache. So we're going to delete this. We don't have need for this. So we can have the raw tool. Okay. So these are all going to go away. And yeah, we just delete these ones as well. These are basically IP addresses we're just testing to ensure that the tool works, or should we say carry out the function which it was designed for. Okay, so the tool structure has only 3 directories. One is for the DNS records, the other one is for the ping IP addresses, and of course we have the utils directory that contains the utilities. Basically, these are essential files, and these files contains various functions, or should we say constants, which are necessary for the entire process to function. So we're not going to describe the structure of this code because we still have future versions we want to implement, like we previously said. So we would skip that aspect of the code, but over here you can definitely see the structure of our code, and you can see the naming conventions just the way we do at CYBERSECURITY. These naming conventions are very straightforward. There is no magic towards it. Sorry. There is no like, if you read the file names, you should definitely know what they are doing. For example, this is resolving the domain. This loads the domain, definitely when we're talking about a file. And this, of course, passes the domain based on the instructions. Okay. Then for IP pings as well, we always have the naming conventions. And of course, if you come to the utils, we have the signal handler, which handles the IO input, the IO interaction. So this has to do with the input and output interactions, whereby if you strike certain functions on your keyboard, the tool will stop executing. Okay. So you don't necessarily need to input commands. Just using a shortcut keys such as Ctrl+C can close the connections, or should we say close the tool from carrying out further actions. Okay. So on our main function here, we just load it out. We have various lines of code, and as you can see, we are still here to put comments. We will be working on that later because this took us a lot of time to debug, and a lot of issues were definitely found. But luckily, with our knowledge and with some side tools, we're able to resolve these issues. Okay. So let's run the main.py. And after we run it, you can see we have, okay, let's just delete this. Okay, let's run it again. Good. So here you can see we have the tool, right? And once you run it, it's going to ask you what actions do you want to perform. So basically, the ideology is not to use a dry run and not to use commands. We just want it to be like a drag and drop features in this first version, whereby you just pass instructions based on the output interactions fed by this tool on your computer screen. And that's all you need to do. So no need to start understanding arguments on things you need to do, like using the help functions and so on, right? So here it asks us that, do you want to ping IPs or resolve DNS? And of course, gave us an instruction of the answers we have to feed to the code, or should we say the tool, for it to carry out the specific actions we want. So let's say, for example, we want to ping the Google IP address or various IP address or domain, right? So we can say ping. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. So we can say ping. Okay. And we hit enter. Now it's asking us, do we want to ping a specific IP or multiple IPs or file path containing various IP address. So let's say we want to ping a single IP. So we provide the IP address 223.189.147 and we hit enter. And you can see the instruction on our screen. It tells us that it detected a single IP address, right? And of course, created a file called reachable IPs. Immediately, this IP was valid and stored it for us. So let's say we want to perform additional actions, right? Let's say we want to perform additional actions of multiple IP addresses. This is what we are going to do. We just say again, we want to perform a ping and we hit enter. Now we put another IP. Okay. So we say before 233.189.150. So now we are using multiple IP addresses, right? Then we hit enter. Good. So now you can see basically it tells us this IP is reachable, and the other one that was not reachable, immediately it created a text file called unreachable IP address, and of course gave us instruction on how we can access these various files. So let's say we want to access this file. Let's just say exit. Okay, we can now say cat reachable IPs.txt and we hit enter. And you can see the list of IP addresses we just pinged right now, right? We have 2 IP addresses, right? And we can also cat unreachable. And you can see the IP that was unreachable is also in that file, right? Great. Now let's perform other actions, right? Now let's run our main.py again. Let's say this time around, we want to perform a DNS resolution, right? We just say DNS. Oh, no, I keep making this mistake, okay? So let's say we want to perform a DNS resolution, right? We just say DNS and we hit enter. Now we can either feed a file path if we have a different file path where we stored our various IPs or domains we want to perform a DNS resolution and to get the DNS resolution records, right? But in this case, we want to use the existing file, which is a valid IP address, which we have previously recon, right? So I'll just say reachable underscore IPs.txt and I hit enter. And good, as you can see, the first IP, you can see the resolution, right? And the A records, okay? So basically, you can see there are no C names, there are no MX record for this. And of course, the A record was also granted for the second IP. You can see this is 147 and this is 149. It's a different IP entirely. And you can see there are no records for this, right? Now, good. Now, let's say we exit this. Okay, now we've done exit, right? Let's clear our screen. Now, let's run the code again. Okay, now this time around, let's say we want to perform a DNS resolution for a domain. Now we don't want to use IP, right? So we say DNS. Okay, now we say you can enter domains, IPs, or file paths. So basically, we can enter a single IP. We can enter multiple IP addresses. We can even enter both. So let's say this time around, we want to enter the IP. Okay. Then this time around, we enter Facebook, a domain. Okay, then we enter Twitter, which is now x.com, and we hit enter. Now you can see over here for the IP, okay, you can see for the IP, right? Reverse lookup for the IP. We got this, right? Now, after it was done, DNS info for Facebook, you went and pulled out both the NS record, the MX record, and of course, there are no canonical names. It's definitely going to be hidden for security reasons. And of course, you can see the TXT record and so on, right? And if we go further, we can see for x.com, which was previously Twitter, you can see we have the various record as well. And this was done within the speed of light. You can see right away, right? And it's now asking us, do we want to exit and do we want to like continue? So in this case, we don't want to do anything anymore. We can now say exit. Now let's do something more interesting. Let's run the tool again. Now let's say we provide for DNS again, and we say https facebook.com. As you can see, it gave us this instruction that it cannot resolve this domain because we did not do a filtering of the HTTPS. Like we previously said, that we still have a much implementation we want to include in this tool. So we can now go back again and we say this time around, we want to do, let's say we want to do for DNS again. And we'll say www.facebook.com. Let's see. Good. Now you can see immediately we gave the w.facebook. You can see this record were retrieved. But when we gave HTTPS, it was not able to retrieve. So this is part of a feature we want to implement in the subsequent version of this tool, whereby it's going to filter out whether you have the HTTPS, www, or any other subdomain functions in a full domain part, and of course resolve those domains and give you the records. Okay, so this is all about Rdpit version 1.0. There is more we want to talk about this tool, but we do not have much time right away because we don't want this video to like exceed more than maybe 20 or 25 minutes. So look out for this tool. Okay, Monday noon US time, we're going to push this to our GitHub repository so you can clone it, play with it. If there are questions you have when trying to use this tool, do not hesitate to like join the Discord, reach out to us one-on-one, or post in our various sections of our channel that is exposed to the public for interactions, and tell us the issues you're facing. And of course, we are going to resolve this. Now, mind you, this is cloning this repository and running it directly from the tools directory. Okay. We have not implemented the function whereby you can install it as a CLI command and of course run it with your machines. This is based on the fact that we still have a few functions which we want to implement in Rdpit. And once we're able to implement those functions and how they have to work efficiently, we can now implement the installation concept whereby you can install this on your local Kali Linux machine as tool binary, and of course running it directly from your Kali Linux terminal without the need of cloning this repository, navigating into the subdirectories of the main.py, and of course trying to run this tool. Okay, so once again, that will be all for this tool. Expect more from us. We have lots of ideas and hopefully we have much time to implement these ideas. And trust us, Rdpit is about to get awesome because there are other concepts in cybersecurity, especially when it comes to active recon, which we have a proper idea about and how it goes, on behind the scene and what is expected when you use this concept to hunt for bugs, which we want to implement in subsequent version of this tool. So be on the lookout for this. And if you're yet to subscribe to our GitHub channel, please subscribe. YouTube, thanks for the values and the numbers. We are seeing them. Thank you once again. We appreciate you guys. And of course, we need more followers on X. Stop whatever you're doing and go hit that follow button on X. And hopefully we can give you more contents that are very promising and of course help you in your cybersecurity journey. So until next time and see you. Bye for now.